Welcome to today's #Wednesdays weekly session, which is all about discovering Kooth and Qwell mental health platforms. The session will be being delivered by Ophelia Murphy from Kooth. Over to you, Ophelia.
Thanks, Hayley. And hi, morning, everyone. My name's Ophelia and I'm an engagement lead for Kooth. I work across Greater Manchester, particularly in the Oldham, Tameside and Wigan boroughs. There's also local leads across all the other boroughs as well. So if you would ever like to be in touch for any further engagement, I will pass on some more contact details at the end. But I will share my screen now and we'll make a start. Okay, I'm hoping everyone can see my screen there. Please let me know if you can't see it. So the two services I'm going to be telling everyone about today are Kooth and Qwell. Just to very quickly mention the age ranges here, that the Kooth.com platform is for the ages 10 to 25. And recently, I think from April, we now have available an adult platform, Qwell.io, for the ages 26 plus. But what I will mention is that if anyone here works with young adults 18 plus, we do say they have the option to access the adult platform Qwell if they prefer something that's a little bit more adult facing. And again, this is available to all of Greater Manchester, free, safe and anonymous mental health support. So to cover some session aims, firstly, I'll give a quick introduction to these services. Then I will go into a more in-depth overview of our support features. I'll also be offering a clinical overview as well with some safeguarding information. Then I will tell you a little bit about our engagement program. So if following this session, you would like some of our promotional materials, you would like to have one of our engagement leads maybe come into a staff team meeting to explain the offer a bit more, anything like that. We also have a series of workshops as well, but I'll get into that towards the end. There will also be space for Q&A at the end, and time dependent, there's a fair bit to go through here. But if there is time, I'm also happy to give people a live site tour. So actually going onto the websites themselves, so you can get that real insight as to what it looks like. Firstly, starting with our introduction, and with Kooth.com, we were founded all the way back in 2001, so it has been going for a really long time now. We were started in Stockport, so it's actually fairly local in Greater Manchester. Started off as a very basic email service back in the day. And then as the internet has grown, so too has the service. And the intention was always to try and help break down the stigma that's attached to mental health services. And the way we sort of address that is by making our support online and completely anonymous. It is also self-referral based, so you don't have to go through any long referral forms. A young person would not have to go to the GP or anything like that. Literally all they need to know is that website address, Kooth.com, and then it can go through and access everything we have to offer. Kooth is also our flagship service, and we have won awards for our delivery, especially since 2020. With the lockdowns, I think there was a growing recognition for the value of digital services, and I think in the wake of that, we've won awards like in 2021, we were the Health Tech Pioneer of the Year in the category for mental health. There's a couple of others, but I can't quite rattle them off the top of my head. But then on Kooth, we also attract young people with a range of needs from a variety of different backgrounds. I used to be a member of our online team, so even just anecdotally speaking, I remember there are quite a lot of neurodivergent young people who use Kooth. So on the autism spectrum with ADHD, we also have a number of young carers on the website. Also have a number of young people who are looked after children. And then we also have quite a big LGBTQ plus community on there as well, where again, I think the online aspect and the anonymity can make it easier for young people to maybe open up about certain things, for example, gender identity. Now, before I go into Qwell, there's something that's a little bit interactive here. So for the people in the call, feel free to pop your answers into the chat, just to say what is the number one across the UK, whether people think it might be anxiety and stress, self-harm, family relationships, eating difficulties, or school and college issues. I see a couple of answers have come through now. Interesting. And I can say it is anxiety and stress that is the number one issue across the board, across all areas. And as you can see from the top 10 presenting issues here, it's quite sad to see things like suicidal thoughts and self-harm are very high up there. But for anyone here who does work with young people, you know, that order might not be much of a surprise. And another question, what presenting issue has increased the most in young people over the pandemic? So for the past 2 years, what has increased as you know, something that might not have been as pressing before, but is much more noticeable in young people now. So there's depression, could be suicidal thoughts, sadness, or self-harm. And just looking over here at my second screen at the chat again, see some responses there. And I can say it is suicidal thoughts that has increased the most over the past 2 years. And again, that is quite concerning to see that reflected in the data. And I think it's always that important reminder that if there are young people who are struggling that much more, especially with suicidal thoughts of ideation, then that's why we want to make sure we have as much information about support options in place as possible. And finally, this is the last one. This is kind of getting people thinking about different hours, opening hours for service times. What time of day is our Kooth service most active? 10 to 11 a.m., 3 till 4 p.m., 7 till 8, or 9 till 10 p.m. Again, I see a couple of answers coming through. So I can say it is 7 till 8 p.m., where 67% of our logins are outside normal office hours, which are 9 till 5 p.m. So I'll talk a little bit more about what exactly our opening hours are, but I do think it's quite helpful to sort of see that and to know that most young people are kind of interested in accessing our service at a time when other services might not be available. Okay, so that's a little bit of an introduction to Kooth. Now getting into Qwell. This is a much newer service. Qwell emerged in 2018. Basically, after seeing the impact we're having with Kooth for young people, we wanted to replicate that provision with adults to help increase that adult access to digital mental health support. And at this moment in time, I think it's always a shifting landscape. But for right now, Qwell is one of the only BACP accredited digital services for adults out there. BACP meaning the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy. Qwell offers the same model of care as Kooth. So when I go through the different support features, keep in mind that unless I say otherwise, it is again exactly the same. The only difference being that one is young person facing while the other is adult facing. And right now, over 3.8 million adults in the UK have access to Qwell. And the whole purpose of my role as an engagement lead is making sure that adults are aware of their access so that they know they can go on there to log in whenever they want. Qwell is available alongside Kooth to all people across Greater Manchester, as both services have been commissioned by the Greater Manchester Health and Social Care Partnership. Okay, and now to kind of touch on the support features, which I will go through in more detail, but broadly speaking, there are 3 strands of support. We have community support spaces. There are self-help tools on both websites. And then we have our practitioner-led interventions as well. And as I said, I'll go into more detail about each of these. But as there is this kind of range of options here, we do like to think of it as being a full mental health toolkit. So if you are speaking with someone, whether it is a young person, a young adult, or an adult that you might be supporting, sometimes that can be a helpful way of explaining it. So it's not just online counseling. It's not just, you could speak to others. There's this kind of choice and this autonomy that's available to them. And with the anonymity, with being online, that really does help with the disinhibition effect, especially for young people who I think, are spending more and more time on their devices, where they can feel this real comfort in opening up in a way they might not feel able to in person. And then finally, we do offer support for a really wide spectrum, a wide range of issues. So we can go from really early help prevention right the way through to supporting some of the most vulnerable people. And while we are not a crisis service, equally, we have never turned anyone away who comes to us in crisis. Okay, so before I go into a little bit more depth about the different features, just to explain the registration process, because once someone has that website address, they go onto it, they'll see that they have to set up an account to access everything on there. And that can be a bit of a barrier. People might think, oh, how many of my details, how much my data do they want? They might switch off. So it could be handy reassuring people that we don't ask for too much information. So when it asks for where someone lives, again, as we're anonymous, not asking for postcodes, not asking for home addresses, anything like that. They would simply choose from a drop-down list of areas where they live. So it could be Rochdale, it could be Oldham, it could be Tameside. And then there is a second list where people just choose from. So if it is, say, Tameside, they could choose from Ashton or Audenshaw or Stalybridge, just wherever is closest to them. We ask for the year and month someone is born, what best describes their gender and most closely matches their ethnicity. And once they've filled that out, that is it. So again, there's no phone numbers, no email addresses. We won't be spamming people or anything like that. Once they have completed those details, they just have to create a username and a password. And again, if you are signposting someone, if you are talking them through this process, it is really, really worth emphasizing as much as possible about the username to keep it anonymous, because if someone maybe puts in their full name, their real name, a date of birth, anything like that, they set that account up and then they try interacting on the website, unfortunately we would not allow them to use that account, so they'd have to go back and set up a whole new account, and we just don't want people to have to encounter that sort of barrier. So if they know right away to not use the name, a social media handle, a gamer tag, basically anything where their friends might be able to recognize them, that is kind of an important requirement for the service, because we always want to protect people's identities. And also on the Kooth website, to try and make this process a little bit easier, young people do have the option to search for the first part of their postcode as well. So not the full postcode, just the first part of the postcode. This is just a little visual to kind of show you what that looks like in the sign-up process. And finally, we do ask people, how did you hear about us? So they can just fill that out. And we might ask if we can use anonymous data for research. Sometimes people can be a little bit worried about what exactly does that mean. But again, as it's anonymous, we're never tying people's data to them. And of course, they have the option to say no if they wish. Okay, so getting into the features themselves, we probably are known first and foremost for our online counselling offer. Now, everything is text-based. We don't do phone calls. We don't do video calls, again, protecting people's anonymity. That does mean that someone would need to have confidence in their literacy skills. Someone kind of would need to feel okay with a very text-heavy website. There are two ways that someone can contact our online service delivery team. This, by the way, is a team made up of accredited counsellors and fully trained and qualified emotional wellbeing practitioners. They can either drop us a message to our team inbox. The website itself is live 24/7, which means that inbox is live. So if someone's maybe struggling with sleep issues, and I do engagement with a lot of schools, I speak to a lot of young people, and it kind of seems across the board, even from primary school and year sixes right the way through to further education, having difficulty of falling asleep seems to be a really big thing. So if it's someone who maybe is stuck ruminating, if they're maybe getting stuck in a thought loop at nighttime, they can't shake something, can't get something out of their head, they could always put it all down in one message to our team, send it across, and then they'll get a therapeutic response back in under 24 hours. So that's one option. The other option is having a live chat with our team. Anyone can access a 1-hour chat session once a week. The first 3 chat sessions that someone would access are assessment based. So in that time, we build a picture of need. We see what someone's presenting issues are, what have they come to us to receive support around, what is their support network. We kind of figure all that out, and then we can kind of gauge what support we can offer them from there. For example, sometimes it could be something just to do around anxiety levels. It could be around low self-esteem. And after having 1 or 2 chats with our team, that might be enough after kind of talking through things, receiving resources, for that person to feel like their well-being has lifted, and that in itself is their intervention. And so if that might be the case for someone with a lower level of mental health needs, we would probably assign them a drop-in status. So they can come along and drop into our chat queue as and when they might want support in the future. If we have someone come along who is more vulnerable, has a higher level of need for support, then by the end of their 3rd chat session, they will be assigned a named counsellor. There might be a few weeks of waiting for that process, looking around people's caseloads, but in that meantime, they always have access to the drop-in chat queue, so someone is never without support during that time. Once they have a named counsellor, they then have 6 structured sessions of counselling support, and depending on where that person is at the end of those sections, we may extend that to a further 6 sessions of support. So there's the potential there to have 12 structured counselling sessions. And we're also open every single day of the year, and we have got opening times to the chat queue. Those are 12 to 10 p.m. on weekdays and 6 to 10 p.m. on weekends. And as I mentioned earlier, 7 to 8 p.m. is usually our busiest time. So sometimes people can be waiting Okay, so hi there on the recording. Sorry about that. We seem to have a brief issue, but we seem to be back. So I will continue. I think I was just explaining about the chat queue and our open times, and just if the chat ever gets busy. But I think I was just finishing off there by saying that we do also have quieter periods as well, where it shouldn't take very long at all for people to be through to speak to someone. Oh, okay. So that's my chat offer. Now going into the community features, so there is a magazine. Again, this does count for Kooth and Qwell services, and absolutely everything in these community spaces and everywhere that is the front-facing part of the website is all pre-moderated. So that means that we check all the content that comes through by a team of moderators before it goes live. So anything inappropriate, any bullying, any trolling, that will never see the light of day. That is always kind of handled behind the scenes, where we'd send someone a message. Also, sometimes with more vulnerable service users, they may post disclosures on there. They may post about, triggering details. And again, those kind of things that we would moderate, and we wouldn't allow that to go onto the website. We do, of course, want people to receive peer support. So as an example, if someone is maybe talking about self-harm, they are absolutely fine to talk about their thoughts and their feelings, and even, coping strategies around harm, but the kind of things that we wouldn't allow descriptions of the methods of harm. People can post anything from short stories, poetry. We get a lot of poetry on the Kooth website. They can also share lived experiences, share advice around things. Again, thinking about Kooth, it could be around exam times, how to revise, how to manage, how to deal with the stress when they're waiting for the results. There's quite a lot there. We do also have a clinical content team who create resources as well. So there's things around, again, stress management, there's things around sleep hygiene, there's things around general mental health awareness. So it could be learning a bit more, say, about OCD. It could be learning a bit more about autism. There's quite a lot in there. And on the Qwell website, the community, I would say, is a bit smaller on there. So we actually do encourage adults to kind of use that space and try to build up the community a bit more. Also, finally, with the moderation, which again applies on both platforms, specifically on Kooth, we also set age ratings. So what a 10-year-old can see on there is very different to what a 25-year-old can see on there. We then have our discussion board. So this is a bit more of an informal space, just if people want to ask questions, maybe say, this has happened to me today. This is something that's really frustrated me. Has anyone else ever been through this as well? Or how can I talk to my friend about this that's happened? Or maybe, what can I do about this thing that's happening in my relationship I'm unhappy about? It's, again, one of those spaces where if you maybe don't want to speak to your family, you maybe don't want to speak to professionals in your life supporting you, it can sort of provide that space, but again, in a safe context. On the Kooth website, we also run live forums. So those are kind of like live web chats with other people on the website. And that's still pre-moderated. That just happens in live time. So those on a different topic each week. As people come through, enter the chat, start talking to each other, there'll just be someone behind the scenes kind of scanning through everything, checking for any risk, checking for anything inappropriate, and letting everything through. But also, if there is something that needs actioning, that will happen behind the scenes. And I think that is pretty much it for the community features. So moving on to the self-help resources that are available. Firstly, there is a journal. This can be used as a mood tracker, as you kind of select an emoji that most closely matches your mood. And if someone were to use their journal regularly, they can start to see trends, they can start to see patterns in their mood. So if someone has maybe talked about mood swings, talked about being very up and down, again, it can be quite helpful and insightful to just sort of see that visually laid out on a page, especially if someone maybe notices, okay, I can see here from my journal, I've been in a low mood for 3 weeks straight now. And sometimes when you can kind of see those trends, it can help you maybe recognize maybe I should reach out for a bit of extra support. So again, someone doesn't have to use all our features, even if just the idea of having that online journal, that online kind of mood tracker is appealing. Someone could use one of these websites purely for that. And there's also a goal setting tool. People have the option as to whether they'd like to set goals by themselves. There's a little progress tracker from 0 to 10, so you can see your progress towards accomplishing that goal. that if they're speaking with our online team, is part of our standard practice at the end of every chat to set goals with our service users. Everyone in our team is COGS trained. That's clinical outcome goal setting. So it's always about setting those measurable, achievable goals to kind of help someone get towards whatever their longer term end goal might be, whether that is, improved self-esteem, whether that's being less socially anxious. There's a lot of things. It could be dealing with anger management. So this can be very helpful, again, whether people want to use it by themselves or have that support from our team with setting themselves goals. And the goals and the journal are also moderated. We're not doing it to kind of spy on people or kind of look too much into people's details. Again, it is simply about doing those safety checks there. So if someone, say, set a goal to hurt themselves, that's the kind of thing that we would flag up. And specific to the Kooth website, we have a hub of wellbeing activities. So people can go in there, just cherry pick which ones might look most helpful for them. These are based around different themes of developing helpful habits, managing our emotions, connecting with others. There's mindfulness techniques in there. There's a breathing exercise. There's quite a few creative writing exercises as well. So again, they can just sort of see what appeals to them. Some of these are a little bit on the younger side. Some are very universal and can be for absolutely any age. For example, if you write a letter to your future self, I think that's just a great reflective activity that anyone can do at any time. On the Qwell website, so for adults, there's something a little bit different. These are known as our collections, and these are made up of carefully curated content, so articles as well as therapeutic activities based on different topics. So we have one on grief and loss, if you know of anyone who might be experiencing bereavement, general stress awareness. There's one around self-care, one on race and culture, one on relationships, one on exploring neurodiversity, and finally, we also have one on gender and gender identity. So again, if any of those stand out to you and you're thinking, right, I know someone where that collection might be really helpful for them to go in and check out, again, please kind of pass on that information about the Qwell website. Okay, I'm going to quickly check my time. I'm doing good for time. Excellent. And now, so that is an introduction and also an overview of the features, but to get into a little bit more of a clinical overview of things. So Kooth Digital Health, that is kind of the wider umbrella under which Kooth.com and Qwell.io sit. On there, we have got different practitioner-led support pathways. So when I mentioned about the online counselling, it's not a case of a one-size-fits-all. So we don't say do CBT with every single person who comes through. When we have those kind of assessment chats and we are figuring out what is going on for that individual, we will then try to tailor our support and be as person-centered as possible with it. So while it might be CBT is very appropriate for a lot of people, equally, it could be more around safety planning, and it could be towards relapse prevention, say if they're struggling with eating difficulties or self-harming behaviors or substance misuse. It could be compassion-focused therapeutic techniques, which our online team are all trained in. There could also be creative writing as, an expression of people's emotions, and that can also be used as an intervention. So those are a couple of examples of the different types of pathways we might adopt with our service users. We also use a range of assessment tools, so we are always assessing how someone is doing, and it's also a way to measure our treatment effectiveness. So if someone is entering into a chat, before the beginning of each chat, they would kind of fill out scores for a series of statements, things like, I've been struggling to cope, or I thought of hurting myself, and it just scored themselves from, say, 0 to 4. And that way we can kind of gauge where someone is at, if there's any risk that's been identified, if we're kind of seeing someone get towards a place of feeling better in themselves. We also keep thorough and encrypted case note records, so there's no concerns, no need to ever kind of worry about that. We take data protection very, very seriously, and I'm going to talk in a bit more detail about safeguarding in a moment. But a quick reminder that no one needs an official referral to access these services. Anyone can join these platforms as long as they are within the age range, which is essentially anyone over the age of 10 across all of Greater Manchester. All right, and now to get into safeguarding. So that is the core principle that encompasses everything we do at Kooth Digital Health. With being online and with the anonymity aspect as well, we have to put safeguarding first. So it really is that core value. And we have our very own safeguarding team. They sit under our wider clinical team, and they are the first point of contact for any concerns that are raised, whether that's by staff or whether it's by service users. So if someone I'll give you an example of a kind of a service user journey. Maybe someone accesses a chat with us and they just kind of talk about things in general. They might be, feeling us out a little bit, and there'd probably be no risk identified. As we operate on a RAG rating of green being no identified risk, amber moderate, red high, we'd set them as a green status. Then say they keep using the website, they use different aspects of it. They go into the discussion boards and maybe they post a disclosure of something that's happened. It might be historic abuse. Because of the moderation process, we will capture that. We will store a record of that in their case notes. We would then escalate up their risk status from green to amber. We would send them a welfare message and invite them to come back into the chat, letting them know that we have seen them, we have heard them with what they've had to say. We might try to publish their post if there is a way to do it without any identifiable or any triggering details involved. And so they do come back into chat again after that, and they maybe open up a little bit more, and we can see, is this ongoing abuse? Do we need to escalate this further up to a red risk? Is this a case of something that's happened a long time ago? How are they doing with this? And we just constantly assess, we constantly explore, and we constantly update people's risk status. The only time that we would ever break someone's anonymity or confidentiality is if we felt they were at immediate risk of harm, whether from themselves or from others. So only at that point would we ask someone for their personal identifiable information, name and address. It is up to that individual if they want to give us their details. So it is very much in their control. It is very much their choice if they want to take things further. Sometimes we might have people who aren't quite ready yet for that next step to kind of tell us and see where things are going to go from there, because we do explain what the next steps will be after we have that information. For example, with a young person on the Kooth website, it could be contacting social services, it could be contacting the police for a welfare check. And if they don't give us their details, what we can do is keep that therapeutic safe space open for them. We can keep our chat open longer for that individual. We will send follow-up welfare messages to them. And I do think that if they are making the effort to come to the website, creating their account, going into the chat, waiting in the chat queue, and then having that chat with our practitioners, all that shows it's a protective factor because they want to reach out and they want to get that support. Again, it could just be a case that they're not ready for the next steps yet, because it could be scary, it could be really intimidating to think of, it could be overwhelming. And if we can just build up that relationship of trust with them, and hopefully with time, if they continue engaging with us, they will give us their details. So that has happened in different instances where they might not give us the details right away, but over time they will do. And then we can link up and ensure there's that sort of joined up care with other external services. So that's kind of what happens in the, more extreme risk scenarios. Again, if anyone has any questions about safeguarding, there's going to be the Q&A coming up soon. Oh, actually, you know what? sorry, before I move on to the next part, just another final point about safeguarding is that, again, we do check for guilt competency, as that can have an impact, especially with the younger ages. And also within our team, we do have clinical expertise, and our team members do receive clinical supervision as well. And we also have like really robust clinical governance in place. There's a lot of policies and a lot of procedures that it's mandatory for every single member of staff to read. That includes our engagement lead. So I can personally say there are a lot. It's all about keeping our service users safe. Okay, and moving on to SEND provision, our platforms do meet the web accessibility guidelines at a level AA. That means, in essence, that the website can be accessible through things like it's compatible with screen readers. You can set the zoom to 400%. There's these small things that can be done to make it easier for someone who might have any learning difficulties or learning needs to access, or equally, if maybe someone has visual impairments, anything like that. And we can look to try and adapt our approach to someone's strengths. And you know, it's not always necessarily about safeguarding. If someone wants to give us their identifiable information, of course, that is in the back end of the website. So that's never in the public domain of the website itself. So other service users would never see their details, but they do have that option. Some do want to give their details to say the named counsellor that they're working with, if maybe they are receiving extra support elsewhere. So if they maybe do have a learning difficulty or learning disability, they're receiving extra support. They might have, a support worker, a caseworker. And if they want, we can kind of liaise with those external agencies. And as I said before, like ensure there's joined up care in place. But at the same time, and this is again a point that I made earlier, with it relying on text-based interactions, if someone really struggles with seeing lots of text, if it is overwhelming for them, say from like a sensory point of view, if maybe someone has dyslexia and they might really struggle with that, again, might find it a bit overwhelming, then we might not always be the most suitable platform. You're very welcome to check us out, and if they do enter chat and maybe say that this isn't the best space for them, we can even pass them on details to other services that are local to their area. Right, so that has covered quite a bit about the different support features, our clinical overview. Very happy to take questions on that. But the final thing that I'll kind of highlight to everyone here, I know we have a bit of a mix of different professional backgrounds. So just to mention about our engagement program, so what I, as a local engagement lead, can offer to you. So we do have a program which can be sent out as a follow-up to this session, but we can offer things from our promotional materials. That includes little cards like the size of a credit card. If you are speaking to someone, you signpost them. It's very easy to just give them that so they can have it in the back pocket. We have posters. We also have flyers, all entirely free of charge to send those out absolutely anytime. Then we do have a list of sessions people can access. So we've got a core offer for anyone who might work in schools, colleges, alternative provisions. We can do an introductory presentation with young people, it's like 10 to 20 minutes, often run these as assemblies, which can really help embed that awareness across an entire year group of students. We also offer this training on the two services. So if someone wants to book that on a bespoke basis with a staff team, could do the full session like this one now, or equally, sometimes people can prefer for to just come along to a team meeting and just do a 10-minute overview, so staff like have a bit of an idea of what these services are about. So we can kind of tailor that to people's needs. And again, if anyone works in any community groups, works with groups, whether that might be parent carer groups, whether that might be with an LGBTQ group of young people, we do have a bit of an enrichment offer of sessions and workshops. So we can run 45 minutes to an hour long parent workshop. We do have an LGBTQ workshop that we run with schools and with organizations as well. We have a stress and anxiety one, which can be tailored to cover exam stress. Come exam period, that is generally quite a popular one. We have a wellbeing workshop, and we also have a writing workshop, a male targeted workshop, which again, November time is more popular, one about peer support and self-care. We can help guide people to sign up to the Kooth website. This is generally a bit more of a focus on young people and young people service with education settings. And we can do a Kooth champion scheme as well, which is a bit like a mental health ambassador scheme. So those are all, again, totally free for people to access. If you work with schools maybe and you think, oh, it'd be helpful for them to have this information, you know, that offer is just out there. Feel free to link us up at any point. And that brings me to the end. So we're doing pretty good for time. I will pause now and see if anyone has any questions. Can't see anything in the chat right now. Oh, okay. Well, as we have a little bit of time, what I can do is very quickly show people the website. So again, you kind of get that insight as to what they look like. So I'll just come